You're listening to Phenomenology Club Radio.
Hello and welcome back to Talk About It, the official podcast series of Phenomenology Club. All of these episodes are broadcasted live to our Patreon audience. If you would like to be a member, you can sign up at patreon.com/Phenomenology Club for only $1. Otherwise, you can hear them 1 week after the initial broadcast on our Spotify or YouTube pages. Enjoy! Hello! Can you hear me? Press 1 if you can hear me. Hello everybody, welcome back to Talk About It, the official podcast series of Phenomenology Club. I'm Buttress, your benevolent Italian-American host, hailing to you from the dark forest of New Jerusalem. How's everybody doing out there in the big old world? It is August 28th, though I probably shouldn't announce the date because who knows when this will get made public. Who knows? You know, I said that I would make these public like a few weeks after I do them, but I haven't been keeping up with that. But honestly, like, who gives a fuck? We are an insular, tight-knit community, and that's part of what makes us so cool and amazing and why our Wikipedia article is going to be so interesting when it finally gets written. Who has the hookup for Wikipedia? We need to get an article going. Maybe once one of us commits a major act of violence, we can finally get it. But who will it be? Who volunteers to commit a major act of violence in the name of Phenomenology Club? Let's go. Don't you want to be a trendsetter? Don't you want to be an influencer? We need that Wikipedia article. Occur? How's everybody? How are we doing? I already went live this Wednesday because I wasn't available last Sunday, and I'll announce right off the bat, I don't believe I'll be available next Sunday because I do have things to do. So I think that instead of doing another Wednesday next week, I think we might just take a little week off. Is that okay for everybody? Is everyone going to be okay without their weekly Phenomenology Club stream? I think you'll be fine. I think. No promises. I was really pleased with how the last upload went. Not to like toot my own horn, but I was like, damn, like, this is that passion. This is that fire. This is that lust for life that people probably prefer to listen to over just mundane meandering. But I don't know. I just felt like the argument was good. I was excited. I was passionate. I was feeling that passion. Do you guys feel similarly? I feel like, not about that upload, but in general, we were talking about it in the club after. It's kind of hard to, like, generate enthusiasm for certain conversations these days where, like, previously, maybe there was more enthusiasm. And that's actually relevant to this upload that we're about to have. You know, in the past, when I was just high out of my mind on amphetamines, I felt so enthusiastic about any topic you could bring to me because I also felt so enthusiastic about everything. I felt enthusiastic about scrubbing my bathroom floor. Those of you who have used amphetamines can relate, I'm sure. This is part of how they work. They just flood your brain with dopamine, and then literally everything becomes incredibly enjoyable and motivational. Scrubbing your bathroom floor, the most fun I've had all fucking week. Talking about what is a chair. Sitting down for 6 hours and creating a chart about what is a chair. So exciting. Literally everything you do when you're high on amphetamine is so fucking exciting and enjoyable. So it's no wonder to me that at the height of my speed use, I found such joy and enthusiasm in discussing anything at all. And these days, it is harder, I think, to find that kind of enthusiasm, but I find it to be a nice thing. I'm in my stoic era. We're in our Marcus Aurelius era. Can anyone relate? Like, I almost think that part of the danger with dopamine enhancing quote unquote substances is that they kind of just lead us nowhere. When everything is so incredibly joyous, then you can go in any direction at any time. And that's exactly what happens to a lot of speed addicts. When you're just completely high out of your mind, everything is so pleasurable, everything is so fun. You have endless amounts of energy to do whatever you want, so you'll do anything. When that becomes absent, I think you start to form more rational paths to more rational goals. And it's interesting thinking about this in the context also of things like philosophy. I mean, I understand that I am just a single being existing in a very unique time and place. And so perhaps what I feel is this kind of jaded attitude I might have a little bit with philosophy at the moment, in that philosophy has never seemed so useless to me. This could just be kind of the emotional byproduct of existing at this intersection of time and space. But it does seem to be maybe a bit of a common experience that as people get older and older, they do seem to lose a certain enthusiasm for activities that they previously enjoyed immensely, like sitting around having conversations about the nature of existence, the meaning of existence, this, that. What do you guys think about this? Can you relate? This is our intro, by the way. I usually spend a few minutes bullshitting in the beginning while we wait for people to roll in. We've had pretty decent viewership the last few weeks for being a private link. So I'm just bullshitting right now for a few moments. I think we have club members fighting in the Discord, by the way. I wonder if they're still going in there popping off. They're fighting about pornography. If you want to fight about pornography, get on into the Discord and fight with us about pornography. I love the way we fight in the club. It's so diplomatic. Many people have come to me and told me that they feel very they feel very satisfied with the climate of discourse in our club, because our club is a space where people genuinely can express views that would be considered highly unacceptable elsewhere, and they also can face opposing views, where we have lots of people representing also mainstream opinions, and we have people going back and forth in a way that is ultimately very diplomatic, which is kind of a rare thing on the internet, you know. Diplomacy is such an art, and it's amazing being a part of an online space where everybody's a little diplomat, an adorable little diplomat. Aaron Wiles says, "Woo, we love fighting about pornography." That's fucking right. Okay, people are relating. I've lost passion for things I liked in my teenage years. Donald says, "I'm still very enthusiastic about talking about philosophy and science." I am to a certain extent, of course, but, you know, like I said, you can't really fake enthusiasm necessarily. It really depends on the topic, you know. I guess maybe we're at a point like the point that we're at now, where we are existing on the brink of like an impending, well, no, we are in the midst of a crisis. I'm sorry. I don't want to give in to the propaganda, this idea that we're on the brink of a crisis, waiting for the crisis to arrive. No, we are in the midst of a crisis. So being that we exist in a state of crisis, I'm less inclined at the moment to care as much about certain philosophical arguments as I used to, because as we all know, philosophy is very much about semantics, and it's very tedious and takes a lot of time and care. So when you're existing in some sort of a crisis, it feels less important, because, you know, we all naturally prioritize what's most important. It's unfortunate that we exist amidst this crisis, because it does, I think, result in a kind of lack of enthusiasm many people feel for like general philosophical discourse. You have to think too, you know, in previous times of great suffering and conflict and crisis, you know, I'm sure certain philosophies became, or philosophical discussions became so arbitrary feeling, you know, like think about like World War II is going on, and some guy's like, yeah, but are apples really red? Like, bro, who cares right now? Like, right now is not the time. I think that's kind of how I feel on some sort of level, even though a lot of people probably can't relate, because, a lot of people would disagree that we're in a crisis to begin with. But to those people, I say, you're wrong. You're wrong. Sonic says, so is aging just like depression then? I don't think so, because, actually, when I was younger, I used to think that old people got soft. And I used to be like, bro, I am never getting soft. I am always going to be this abrasive, hot-headed, passionate person with an unquenchable lust for life. As I got older, I've begun to, and now I really do, see that previous person, quote unquote, as so naive and really stupid. I don't think old people or older people are necessarily softer or depressed. I think it's more that a certain wisdom comes with age, because with age comes experience, and the more cumulative experience you have of existing in the world, the more you begin to see things in different configurations, and certain things that you previously thought were so exciting and cool and awesome, you might lose some of that passion for, because you begin to see them as more and more arbitrary, which a lot of the activities we set out to do as youth absolutely are. For me, an example would be film. I was so obsessed with film. I've tattooed names of directors on my arm. I have them right here. I was determined and convinced that I would become a great film director, because film is, according to me, the most enjoyable form of art. Perhaps not the highest form of art, which would probably be music, but regardless. But as I get older, I see, film is dead. There is no more film. I didn't fall in love with video. I fell in love with film. And I'm not fucking Joan of Arc. I'm not going to be out here in the streets screaming, we need to bring back film. I'll live. I can live. Most people in the history of the world live without seeing a film a day in their life. These are the kinds of things you grow to think on as you get older and older. And it's crazy. Like, I probably would have died for film 10 years ago. And now I'm like, oh, you were cute. You were cute, you little fucking freak. I think that you get broader perspective. Your perspective doesn't shrink as you get older, clearly. You start with a limited, narrow perspective, and then as you get older and older, it broadens and broadens, and I don't care what anybody says. This is crucial life experience that does make you more wise. There's a reason that being elderly has always been associated with accumulated wisdom, because this is just true. Experiential knowledge only accumulates and broadens throughout your life. Now, of course, many people are fucking idiots and won't make good use of all of this broad perspective they accumulate through experience, but the fact remains, older people know more than younger people. And so I don't think it should be looked at as some sort of depression so much as perhaps coming into a sort of stoicism and austerity, a sort of maturity, a prioritization of what's important and what's most realistic, etc., etc., etc. Mishka says, which is the crisis right now? Well, I don't want to get into that because we've kind of exited our TED-pilled, black pill upload era, but if you listen to some of the previous uploads, I think that I've really outlined what I think the current crisis is. The current crisis of immense amounts of trash, immense amounts of pollutants. It's an environmental crisis as well as an aesthetic crisis. We exist in what I consider to be an aesthetically awful landscape. I was actually just thinking about this the other day. Like, the aesthetic configuration of everything and what we experience every day, it's so distracting. Like, the fact that I went hiking today, okay? And I went out and I climbed to the top of a mountain. Not really. But I looked from a high peak and saw all of these mountains around me. And I was just annoyed that there was like little houses in the landscape. Like, I'm annoyed. I can't look anywhere really and just see an uncorrupted landscape. When I'm driving, I see, things in the sky, things on the air. It's like, it's just too much, When you think about it, think about how many times you've decorated your room and tried and failed or succeeded, and how much of an effect it has on your mentality in that moment, you know? How much a dirty room can really like make you feel awful. We don't really ever think about this as it applies to like the outdoors, you know? Like I can't really look anywhere without seeing some ugly like billboard in my frame of vision, or ugh, just stuff. I don't want to always see stuff. Think about how early humans, before all this infrastructure, experienced the sky, you know? Imagine being able to see a giant uncorrupted sky, or vantage point in the distance, some sort of horizon without any sort of visual pollution. How would you experience the world? I think it would be markedly different. I mean, even the just format of like driving, everything is like orients our vision to the ground, roads, you know. We're like always, oh, everything that we've designed as far as human infrastructure goes draws our eyes downward. Whereas before, I imagine humans probably looked up way more to the sky, you know. We never really are encouraged to look at the sky. Everything, there's so much distraction littering the earth. And eyes on the road, bitch. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. The trash issue, the environmental issue, the aesthetic issue, and of course the health issue. I think that we are absolutely in a crisis of human health, where because of all of the environmental contaminants and processed foods that we eat, and also just general industrial technological society, we have become a bunch of beta, unhealthy, autoimmune disease ridden individuals, and it's awful. Oh god, I've gone so far over the intro time. We're talking about human health. This is a perfect segue into discussing tonight's topic, addiction. Let's talk about addiction. Firstly, what is it? Because, you know, whenever I have gone to look at content about addiction, which I've done a lot of actually in the past few years as I've overcome my addiction to drugs. And then I did overcome my addiction to cigarettes, but recently have been struggling again. I just got a week without smoking, and then I got a little drunk and I went and bought a pack like a fucking idiot. God, kill me. It's okay. I went a week. That's progress. I would have never done that before. Anyway, in looking up all this content about addiction, you know, I always am engaging with these kind of materials, like give you advice, tips, what to do, this or that, but I rarely, if ever, have ever seen it discussed what exactly is addiction. And since what we like to do is define words, let's talk about it. What is addiction? Somebody give me an answer. I'll wait here until somebody gives one. Mishka says, technically, we can talk about porn and addiction together. Absolutely, we can. But, you know, last stream was very, very feminist. Let's stay away from the feminism for a second, because I don't want to get mad. I'm in a good mood. Zensei says, immoderate consumption. Okay. So, essentially, exceeding moderate consumption, Sensei is saying, right? Sounds decent. Cami says, dependency on a thing to help you escape the ills of the world. Sad face. Oof. Cowlian says, ooh, I recognize you. I haven't seen you in a minute. Hello. Well, like nicotine, I feel like it gives you a physical response if you don't get some. Okay, so I'm not sure I really understand that sentence, but I think I know what you're saying. I think you're saying that certain things like nicotine create some sort of a physical dependency, right? This is really an interesting thing to think about, actually, and we were kind of discussing this somewhat recently in the club. Addiction. You know, there's kind of this attitude that there's things that are physically addicting, and then there's things that are sort of mentally addicting. But really, when you think about it, the mechanism of all addiction seems to be, and I'm no neurologist, I know nothing really about neurology, so please correct me if I'm wrong. We got any neurologists in the chat? But from what I understand, all addictive behaviors essentially result in dopamine rewards. So something like watching porn, watching your weird balloon porn, that gives you a dopamine reward, especially as you jerk yourself to completion, watching balloons popping. But then, by contrast, something like cigarettes, you become addicted to nicotine, but cigarettes also have, I believe the word's dopaminergic enhancing properties. Cigarettes also result in dopamine rewards. So does heroin, so does methamphetamine. Pretty much everything enjoyable in the world is enjoyable precisely because there's a dopamine reward. There is nothing, unless I'm mistaken, any neurology stands in the chat, please say something. As far as I understand, there's no such thing as a pleasurable activity that does not accompany a dopamine reward. Can anybody think of one? This is pretty much the definition of pleasurable itself, resulting in dopamine. We're trying to be materialists here, right? Here at Phenomenology Club, we're in our Marxist era, except it's like demented Marxism. But it is. Would you say that it's appropriate to say the definition of what is pleasurable is that which results in dopamine? If we were to create some sort of scientific explanation, because let's think, even when it comes to the most like stoic activity, let's say denying yourself masturbation, I don't know, people find a satisfaction also in denying themselves. Monks find satisfaction in ascetic behaviors, drilling holes in their head, pulling heavy weights around with their testicles. Even this, I would imagine, I don't know, and this is a hard thing to prove, I believe, with imaging, but it seems reasonable to think that even these kinds of behaviors probably do have some sort of dopamine reward associated with them, right? Seems like dopamine is essentially kind of the thing that like guides us in any direction. It seems like we kind of assign, maybe that's not true, but it seems like we're able to kind of reward ourselves, quote unquote, with dopamine when we do things that we think are good for ourselves. And so even ascetic behaviors ultimately do feel pleasurable. Phil Mitchell before crack says there's a bliss you get from meditation that I'm pretty sure isn't dopamine. Phil Mitchell before crack, I'm going to guess that if I Google right now this meditation dopamine, we will see that their meditation itself has dopamine rewards. Are you ready? Hope I'm not wrong, but I'm just gonna go ahead and take a wild guess. Ready? First result. One study, including 8 experienced meditation teachers, found a 65% increase in dopamine production after meditating for 1 hour compared with resting quietly. These changes are thought to help meditators maintain a positive mood and stay motivated to remain in the meditative state for longer. Look at that. How did I know? God, I'm so smart. I know everything. Knowing everything gives me dopamine. I imagine that this is pretty much true for any activity that anybody finds satisfactory. I'm just gonna call me crazy because dopamine is abundant. It's not like dopamine is this thing we only experience very rarely when we smoke weed or when we, I don't know, get a comment on social media, which isn't a rare occurrence by any means. But, like we experience dopamine probably all day long to varying degrees. I mean, is there a moment in time when we don't experience it at all? It seems like all addiction deals with activities that I'm at a loss for words, that enhance dopamine or create dopamine, produce dopamine. I don't know which words to use because I'm not a neurologist, you know what I mean? But I feel like the definition of pleasure itself is things that give us dopamine rewards. And all addictive behaviors are also things that result in dopamine rewards. So, in light of this, let's go back to this question of what is addiction. We don't necessarily need to include any sort of neurochemical concepts in our definition, but it's interesting because when going about talking to people about what is addiction, especially in the modern era, there's all of this conversation right now about like, are we addicted to our phones, and then discussion about like they give us dopamine and then we want more and more and more. And then there's there's all types of interesting discussions about this shit, and it's like, well, what is addiction? Like, where is the line drawn? Because if everything pleasurable I do results in dopamine, and that habituates me into doing certain activities, let's say I love to wake up at 5 a.m. and go jogging. I don't. I'm just trying to paint the picture of like, some sort of like Steve Jobs CEO that everybody would say is like so productive and great. Let's say every day at 5 o'clock, like clockwork, I get out and I go jogging in my black turtleneck. Then I come home and eat 2 pineapples, check my emails, check my stocks, and set about getting to work every day. I mean, all of these activities probably give me dopamine, right? And if I do them every day like clockwork at the same time, and I actually feel irritated and upset when I can't do them, then could people say I'm addicted to a healthy lifestyle? Like, the very concept of addiction seems to be ultimately kind of meaningless when you really think about it, which is kind of scary and weird to behold, because it's treated as this like existential state of being. We talk a lot about how nouns, as a function of grammar, are always essentializing non-essential properties of individuals. The examples we've given in the past are, we say things like, he is an abuser, instead of he abused that person, or she is violent, instead of she behaved violently. Nouns essentialize properties and essentially make you feel like I am this thing that I do, in parentheses. So I know that with programs like NA and AA, which I've never been to, I've always been really turned off by when I see videos or even depictions in movies of people at these kinds of meetings, and they always start off by saying like, hi, I'm Bethany, I'm an addict. Even if you haven't done drugs in 20 years, you introduce yourself as an addict. Like, if you aren't participating in addictive behaviors, then why exactly are you calling yourself an addict? I understand if this mindset helps certain people. If you have some sort of attitude about yourself where it's like, well, you know what? I don't believe I can be trusted with any sort of moderation for any sort of substances that I've participated in. Therefore, I'm just going to consider myself a person who completely lacks the ability to demonstrate moderation or self-control. Perhaps that helps some people. I still would argue it's philosophically contentious and kind of self-hating, but I'm not going to tell addicts how to deal with their addiction, especially as a former addict myself. I wouldn't call myself an addict anymore. Maybe I'm addicted to cigarettes. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's part of why this concept of addiction is treated as being so definitively true, because we've really, really essentialized the idea of an addict. And people always say things like, I have an addictive personality. Bitch, what? We all do. Do we all produce dopamine? Yes. We all have addictive personalities. Of course, I'm not trying, again, to police how people see themselves, especially as it relates to overcoming struggles, many of which can kill you. Okay? It's very hard. So I'm not trying to diminish how people overcome these struggles, because it's hard as hell, because it's a real physical cycle you get stuck in. I know this as an ex-amphetamine addict. You feel so empty and deprived of dopamine and positive emotion without the substance. You reinforce this kind of symbiosis where you need it. You need it. We were talking about this the other night too in the club when I got drunk off 3 White Claws, like a beta female that's 5'2", and went and got some cigarettes. As I was smoking these cigarettes, listening to Evil Pimp and feeling so excited, I was like, wow, all of these like memories started flooding back into my head of like times I've had at techno shows on drugs with friends. All of a sudden I start missing friends. I'm like, what is going on? What is it about being a little bit of drunk, which is a dopamine enhancing situation, and also now smoking cigarettes, also dopamine enhancing, that all of a sudden now my mind is just flooded with like all of these positive memories from my past, and all of a sudden I miss certain individuals I haven't seen in forever, and I feel so emotional. And I'm thinking, like, you know what? It makes sense that all of my most positive memories in life are when I'm absolutely fucking blasted. Because when I'm absolutely fucking blasted, I'm high as shit on dopamine. And like we've been discussing, the very definition of pleasure, in my opinion, this is loose, by the way, we didn't make an actual definition. The very definition of pleasure is that which rewards with dopamine. So how am I supposed to make some sort of sober memories to be my new baseline for what makes me so happy when my sober baseline does not result in nearly as much dopamine production? I feel like people beat themselves up. I know I certainly do. When I think about like, oh, why can't I just form like happy, sober memories? Like or not even totally sober, but like, like it's like all of my life's finest moments for me are when I'm just blasted. And it's like, you know what? That makes perfect fucking sense. Of course, my happiest moments are at the moments where my dopamine is peaking. Fucking duh. So I'm not going to hold it against myself. Of course, I find it kind of unfortunate, but this is what's unfortunate about drugs and the thing we call addiction, period. Your body is naturally, quote unquote, hardwired to seek out dopamine rewarding activities. So when you find one, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's heroin, whether it's methamphetamine, whether it's amphetamine, of course you are going to go out and get more of it. It's like we discussed with our upload about excess and overconsumption. Our bodies are wired to go get food. And if you see food, if you come upon food in the wild, you're wired, quote unquote, to hoard it. You're not wired to be like, oh, let me not be a slob. I'm only going to eat half of this wild pig carcass I came upon. No. You know that you might not find more in the wild. We are essentially hardwired to be ravenous beings, always consuming. Always. Like Chads, going out into the world and just consuming everything. I think that this is true for food, and this is true also for dopamine rewarding activities. So you don't have an addictive personality, my brother, my sister. No, you are simply a human being, hardwired to engage in activities that reward with dopamine. AIM says, the point of stating you are an addict is a part of recovery. It's to help understand that recovery is an ongoing process. I absolutely understand that, AIM, and that's why I wanted to say, and did say, that, when it comes to addiction, you ultimately have to game your way out. At least I did. One really good way to game your way out of addiction for me has been not to tell myself I'm an addict. I can't relate to that mentality because it just conflicts with my worldview. But what I tell myself is, you can have the thing later. You just don't want the thing right now. We're taking a break from the thing. Whether it's cigarettes or speed, I would just say, look, it's not going anywhere. And I'm right. I don't have to lie to myself. I don't have to engage in any sort of concept I find philosophically fallacious. I can just say, look, Bethany, cigarettes are not going anywhere in the foreseeable future. They're right down the road at the Exxon. If you want, you can go get a pack, but they're going to be there tomorrow and they're going to be there the next day. You don't have to right now. You should take a break because this is unhealthy. They're not going nowhere. Same with speed. Speed still exists in the world. I could go and get some right now. I'm just not doing that right now. I'll do it later if I want. Right now, I don't want to. Period. Easy. Boom. Phil Mitchell before crack says, also, addiction isn't just feeling bad when you stop doing something. It's that you literally can't stop doing something. Well, I would disagree with that, Phil Mitchell before crack, because if that was true, then there would be no such thing as a recovering addict. Are you saying that people who overcome their addictions were not truly addicted because they found a way to stop? Because that doesn't make sense to me otherwise. It's not that you literally can't stop, because then there'd be no such thing as addiction recovery. Emily says, yeah, the disease never goes away is the point, not meaning you can't learn to cope with the symptoms. I mean, look, I disagree personally with conceptualizing it as a disease, because I think when we do that, we're essentially denying what seems more true, which is that humans are designed to engage in activities that result in dopamine rewards. That's not a disease. And when you think of it as a disease, you're essentializing something that's not real and saying that that's what you are. I wouldn't personally do that because it doesn't make any sense. However, it's a different story entirely when you are in the throes of addiction and you might have to lie to yourself or make some sort of configuration to make things work for you. So if the thing that gets you out of addiction is telling yourself, I'm an addict, I have addict disease, by all means, do what you got to do to stop doing it. But for me, someone who also overcame addiction, I don't know how to believe in something I don't believe. I don't believe that addiction's a disease. I don't believe I'm an addict. I believe that drugs are very rewarding, and that's why I love them. And so I do them, or did them, kept doing them. And I think if I got into drugs again, I would keep doing them probably because it's good. And I am a Chad, and I do what I want. And if it feels good, I'm going to keep doing it. Mishka says, do you mean that everyone... Oh, you're talking to Emily. I see. Verm says, that's a great observation. There's a sense in which the thing you want will disappear forever if you don't do it. Meow. That's the thing, Verm, because the first time I quit smoking cigarettes, I only got like 2 days. I remember feeling this great sense of loss, as if a friend I had died. Like, oh, I missed them so much. There was just this void in my life, and it's part of what drove me back to smoking right away. Because I was telling myself, like, look, you can't smoke anymore. You're too old. You're going to get lung cancer. It's so unhealthy. Everybody else has stopped. You smell like shit. You look like shit. You're spending too much money. And then I went out and I smoked, like, so many packs right away because I'd just beaten myself up and said, oh, and I felt this great void in my life. I've literally felt like a friend had passed away. Like, oh, I need it. But when it actually, it's similar to dieting. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. When you tell yourself, I can't have any cookies. I can't. I'm fat. I'm ugly. I can't eat the cookies. Then you go and you're like, ugh, I want a cookie. And then you eat a cookie and then you eat the whole box. If you just told yourself, look, you can't have a cookie today. Maybe you could have a cookie tomorrow. Just don't have one today. You have a cookie problem. Then it becomes so much easier because you have this expectation that, you know what, cookies haven't gone anywhere. The same is true for drugs and for cigarettes. If you tell yourself, which is absolutely true, look, there's drugs down the street, there's cigarettes down the street, but right now you're going to sit here and not have them today. You can last a day, can you not? Then one day turns into 2 days, 2 days into a week into a few months, etc., 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 and now here you are. Your lungs are clean. Your veins are clean. Everything's fine. Zensei says, I think Doug Stanhope said something to the effect of, there's no such thing as addiction. There are just some things that are better than real life. Something like that, and I agree, says Verm. I mean, Zensei. Well, it is real life, you know? I think that's the thing that maybe we aren't encouraged to think about enough with addiction. Like, this is real. This is a material process. This cycle of having a dopamine rewarding activity, and then you want more of it, so you go back and do more of it, and then you kind of habituate this everyday behavior where you can't stop. And so let's get back to defining addiction, because we still haven't done it. What is addiction? Let's read the Merriam-Webster definition and then see how we feel about it in light of all we've just discussed. Ready? Addiction.
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 A compulsive, chronic, physiological, or psychological need for a habit-forming substance, behavior, or activity having harmful physical, psychological, or social effects, and typically causing well-defined symptoms such as anxiety, irritability, tremors, or nausea upon withdrawal or abstinence. The state of being addicted. God. That's weird, because Merriam usually gives us these very vague, like, philosophical definitions. That was almost like a medical explanation. There's one other definition. Let's read that. Definition 2. A strong inclination to do, use, or indulge in something repeatedly. See, that's the kind of definition we usually get from Merriam. A strong inclination to do, use, or indulge in something repeatedly. But if that's true, then, I mean, do we say we're addicted to food? Because based on that definition, I have a strong urge every day to eat food. I have a strong urge every day to drink water. A strong urge every day to take a shit. So is that an addiction? Of course not. But this definition kind of sucks. And really, when you think about it, I can't really think of a good definition of addiction, period. It's kind of hard. Let's see if Google has a better one. I'm on Merriam. Addiction definition. Addiction.
Addiction.
Why does Google definitions always have like a little kid talking? I think we're uncovering something. It's like the dictionary voice for Google when you look up a thing. Oh, it's Oxford that Google uses. It's like little kids. What's up with that? Addiction.
Addiction.
What the fuck? One more time. Addiction.
Addiction.
Ew. God, I hate it. Addiction. Noun. The fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. Again, here we go. Very vague. Very vague. What's the definition then of addicted? Let's look at that. Addicted.
Addicted.
What the fuck? Addicted.
Addicted.
Ew, you creepy little kid. Adjective. Physically and mentally dependent on a particular substance and unable to stop taking it without incurring adverse effects. Okay. Well, this points us in a direction, at least. This gives us the element of a substance, which I think is probably important, because people right now, especially, we've gotten into the habit of saying, like, phones are addicting, porn is addicting, games are addicting, and this is all true, I think, absolutely true in a sense, but I do think that it's important to draw a distinction between activities that naturally, quote-unquote, enhance dopamine versus substances doing it for us. Do you all agree? I think that there absolutely needs to be some sort of delineation between these two, especially because why do we care? Part of why we care is because addiction destroys lives, right? So we don't want to lump in pornography addicts with heroin addicts. We don't want to lump in phone addicts with methamphetamine addicts. In my opinion, I don't think that that does a service to the people who need help the most, especially. You know, being addicted to Mario Kart is not like being addicted to methamphetamine. Being addicted to Mario Kart probably won't kill you. I mean, it could, but it probably won't. So that is one thing I would say. I think that we at least need two separate definitions. Because again, if we're going back to the original argument, quote unquote, there is no argument really. This whole thing has been an exploration in what addiction even is. And I still don't feel confidently, but I think here I finally come to a crossroads where I can say definitively, I think that our definition of addiction should at least, for now, only speak to substance abuse, because, or we need to create two separate definitions, because if we're going to say Mario Kart is addicting, then that also raises the question of what does addiction mean in this context? Doing something that is pleasurable over and over? Don't we all do that every day? We eat because it's pleasurable, and we need to, but our bodies motivate us to eat with pleasure responses and dopamine rewards, right? So engaging in a habitual way in rewarding activities, I would say, that should not be the definition of addiction, at least not the same addiction that speaks to addiction, substance addiction. Do we all agree? AIM says maybe addiction is too big of a term, or it should be used as an umbrella term, and each substack under has its own qualifications. Absolutely, I agree, AIM. I'm glad that you agree too. We're getting somewhere, guys. All we need is 5 more hours. We can have a definition of addiction. I think that we can all at least agree on this. This feels good. Aaron says, wow, you can tell she's Italian American by the way she says Mario Karts. Get out of here. Emily says, yeah, there's just a varying degree to which someone engages unhealthily in a dopamine producing, not just substance based activity to an effect that may be harmful at least at some point in their life. Like Bethany says, it's natural to seek these things out. I agree. So I think that we at least can all agree. We got to get out of here soon. We've been almost an hour. This is fun. Look, guys, we're doing philosophy. This is why, it's funny that we started this upload saying philosophy's so tedious and becoming increasingly boring, quote unquote. But, this feels like a productive activity because this is how you get to the bottom of things, right? I think that we can all agree, it seems that we're all in agreement, that addiction is a very broad, vague term that just kind of speaks to doing something to the point of where someone would say it's harmful. And that ultimately is too vague of a definition if we want to have a useful word. Because video games, are pleasurable. Doing them over and over creates pleasure responses. But the same is true for eating. The same is true for running. The same is true for general feelings of productivity. So this is not really an easy thing to define. I think we can all agree at least that speaking about substance abuse should have a different definition than speaking about seeking out pleasurable activities. And perhaps this is actually a good place to end, because perhaps next week what we can do is, well, not next week. Actually, remember, we're taking a break. I think maybe we'll do a Wednesday. I can't do next Sunday. Maybe we'll do next Wednesday. Stay tuned. If we don't meet next Sunday, we'll meet either the following Wednesday or the Sunday after. But perhaps what we can talk about next time is this concept of whether or not a thing like games should or could be called addicting. Because now that we've decided that substance abuse addiction and non-substance abuse addiction, quote unquote, require different definitions, we should now talk about whether or not we truly even believe that we should have a concept like addiction to describe something like our habitual playing of Mario Kart. Right? I think that that would be a great place to start. But before we go, let's have our binaural meditation really quick. It'll be very quick. Let's do one about overcoming addiction. Ready? Oh my God. Extremely powerful self-connection meditation. I didn't even type in addiction. God. Boost your strength to overcome addiction with binaural beats. That's a little intense. Anti-addiction, sleep frequency, fight addiction while you sleep. Well, we're not sleeping. Overcome addiction, binaural beats, and isochronic tones with a little picture of a cigarette. Let's do this. Everyone get ready. Relax. Sit back. And prepare to be binauralized. Breathe in. Oops. Breathe out. We, the members of Phenomenology Club, manifest that we will come up with a workable definition of addiction. We manifest that we will independently and individually overcome the harms that we encounter in our day-to-day existence as it relates to this concept of addiction. We manifest that despite it being true or untrue, whether or not a person can truly be an addict or simply act in a way that is addictive matters not. We manifest that our health and wellness will remain our number one priority as we go about on this semantic adventure. Amen. And there you go. That didn't make any sense to me, but I feel a strong overcoming of addiction. Can anyone relate? Alright, everybody, please give this video a thumbs up because it's really, really fucking important. Seriously important. And again, no meeting next Sunday, but the Sunday after, unless we do a Wednesday, which I'll announce. As always, I announce on the Discord and also on the Patreon. If we go live next Wednesday, there'll be a post on the Patreon. If not, I'll just see you at our scheduled Sunday. So not next Sunday, but the following Sunday, okay? Everybody, please stay safe. Please think about this. By the way, I want you to think, if you come up with a good definition of addiction, please drop it in the chat. And also, preliminarily, answer the question that we're going to be talking about next live stream. Do you think that we can even create a definition of addiction that includes things like gaming and pornography and whatever else? Because we know that these activities result in dopamine rewards, but so does everything that's pleasurable. So where is the line drawn? Is it possible, my friends, for this to happen? Let us know what you think. Let's go talk about it. Everybody stay safe, stay sane, and until next time, stay trippy. Phenomenology Club signing off. Good night.